Hello, Potter Than Hellions. Welcome back to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is Steve, your host, and this is a special bonus episode, and I am joined by the one and only. He's known by many names, but we're going to call him Joey Cassata today. How are you, my friend?
Many names. That was a couple. How are you, dude?
I'm good. I was going to introduce you as Joey Licious, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. And I actually couldn't. I know because you went under. It wasn't the Italian Stallion. It was
the Italian Dream.
The Italian Dream. There it is. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, we will get into all of that later.
Oh, absolutely. For those of you guys that don't know who Joey Cassata is, he is the former drummer of the awesome band ZO2. They toured with Kiss. They had 3 great albums out. He's on Broadway. This guy's everywhere. He's everywhere. He was on a TV show. He's got his own series now. It's on Amazon Prime. I just watched it the other day. It's called Wrestling with Joey Licious, correct?
Yes, it is.
And it's fantastic. And like I said, we'll kind of get into this. I'm gonna go chronologically. But Joey, give us a quick plug for your book here.
So my book is called Start With a Dream: A Drummer's Journey from Rock and Roll to TV to Broadway. It's basically my journey of becoming a musician. It all started when I went to see Kiss at Madison Square Garden in 1979 on the Dynasty Tour. I saw that show and my mind was completely blown. From that moment, my whole entire life has been pursuing the dream of either becoming the next Kiss drummer or just becoming a famous drummer. And that's, it just sparked this interest in my life that I just was never able to distinguish. It was just, I could never ever get rid of it, and it was just something that I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. So the book really takes me on a journey, and it takes the reader on a journey throughout growing up in the 1980s, what it was like back then, going to record stores and picking your favorite record, or not even knowing a record was out until you got to the record store, and listening to it on your Walkman and hanging out with your friends and doing all the crazy stuff throughout the 80s. And it really follows my career throughout my bands, early bands. Everyone struggles with their early bands. And then later on, with the success of my band ZO2, we got to tour with Kiss. I'm sure you want to run through the timeline, but we got to tour with Kiss on the Rock the Nation tour. It was absolutely a dream come true for me, as you can imagine. And then throughout the rest of my career, we had a TV show and so on and so forth. The book really just takes you on a journey of following your dreams. It's a feel-good story. It's a Kiss fan story. The whole entire book is really about Kiss, and everything I do relates to Kiss and how I followed that journey from me being in Madison Square Garden, seeing Peter Criss for the first time, to all the way to the end of the book. Peter Criss actually wrote the foreword to my book. So it really bookends the story of my life.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Joey, and it's great to hear you describe it that way, because except for being in a band, your youth pretty much follows how mine was, because I was a Kiss fan early on, although I wasn't as fortunate as you to get to see them in 1979. I didn't get to see them till the Hot in the Shade tour, but reading your book, hanging out with your buddies, watching wrestling, going to wrestling shows and stuff like that, and you hit one nail on the head there when you said, going into a record store when you see a new album and you didn't even know it was out, and you're like, holy shit, there's whatever. Because I remember we went in, me and my buddies went into a store in a mall. We were in our church youth group weekend. We were down the King of Prussia Mall down by Philadelphia, and we walked in and there was music from The Elder. We didn't even know it was coming out. And it was like, and it was weird because it was the whole wall of the albums. It looked like it was just like a paneled wall. And then you go over, you're like, holy shit, that says Kiss in there, like a new album. So,
right.
Like I loved that feeling. Like now it's, when everything's coming out now, when you hear a couple songs before. Some bands, they would release singles before the albums would come out, but like you don't have that anymore. You know what I mean? You don't have that, holy shit, there's something new. You once in a while you'll get it, but not overall though. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Listen, don't get me wrong. Kids today and even us today, we have our advantages. If I had YouTube as a kid, and I could go on and see basically any Kiss concert ever,
yep,
I would have lost my mind, especially like if you would have taken me from 1984 and dropped me into 2020 and told me all of this stuff is at my fingertips. I would have literally lost my mind.
Oh,
But what kids don't understand, the excitement back then, because information was so scarce. You could find information in a handful of places. You could look in a newspaper, in a local music paper, a magazine, and sometimes a television set would give you information on your bands, and then the radio. Those are literally all the information spots you could gather any kind of info that you needed to have on your band, whether they were coming on into your town on tour or if they were releasing a new record. It was impossible to know anything. You had to go to the local mall or the local record store and literally just hang out and just browse and look for records. And in my book, there's a great story of how the first record that I ever bought, it's funny that you mentioned The Elder, was music from The Elder. I had double platinum already, and I had a couple of other Kiss records because I saw Kiss at Madison Square Garden in 1979. And then once 1981 hit, I was ready to buy my first record with my own money. Went to the mall, saw saw music from The Elder, and had no idea if it was a real Kiss record or not. I saw the hand on the album. I saw this big brown door. I was like, what the hell is this? You didn't know what it was.
Right.
And I really was not even sure if it was a Kiss record. Of course, it had the logo in the corner, but I was unsure. So what I did was I bought the cassette because I had my Walkman on me, which was my most prized possession.
Oh, absolutely.
I never left home without it.
Yep.
I had my Walkman on me just to make sure that it was a real Kiss record. So I bought the cassette, put it in my Walkman, and if it was fake or if it was a bootleg or something like that, I would have returned it and bought something else. Sure enough, the oath kicked in, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is too about I've talked about this a couple times with my buddies. It's different being a fan of music now because you could start anywhere in any band's career, but when you're like when we were back in the 70s, I became a Kiss fan in 76, 77. And so I got these albums I only had a couple albums to go back to alive in the first three, but like you go along with the band, and when The Elder came out, it was just the newest Kiss record. It was it was different obviously, but that was the album you still listened to day and night for months when it came out, because you didn't have 10 other albums ahead of it.
Right.
It was the newest
Not
Kiss
only
album.
10 other albums, but you didn't have, today you have Spotify, and you have,
Right.
iTunes, and you have, all these thousands and thousands of songs at your fingertips, where back then the magic of a new record was taking that record, putting it on your turntable, and literally immersing yourself into that side you were on, and then flipping the side over, living with that record for weeks and weeks and weeks, studying the liner notes and the jacket and the credits and the lyrics. You would just study that thing for hours upon hours while you were listening to it, imagining what it was like to be in that band or to be in the recording studio with them. And you would just use your imagination all day rather than, let me flip to the next song. Let me flip to the next song. Let me hear this album. You lived with what you had, and that's why I think the fans from back in the 1980s and the 70s, of course, are some of the most fanatical fans in the world. Whereas today, there's so much to choose from in the buffet. Nobody ever really is fascinated and infatuated with any one particular thing. Where back then, I was so infatuated with Kiss. Anything they released was complete masterpiece to me, because I would live with it and it would be my world for months.
Yeah, I mean, and even like when Kiss Alive 2 came out, and like every woo and ha and hey, like in every song,
yeah.
It's another thing I've talked about on our podcast as well, that you don't listen to music the same now as you used to back in the day, because you don't have, you didn't have everything at your fingertips. And, I had a paper route, and that's how I was buying my albums. So I was like,
right.
when the Kiss solo albums came out, I'm like, okay, what am I going to buy first? Because I obviously couldn't buy all four at the same time. So, I actually, Paul's was the first one I bought, and Ace's was actually the last one, which I don't know why.
Wow.
Yeah, we did a crossover episode with Steven and Sonny from Grown Up Rock, either last year or the year before, we split the solo albums up between our podcasts. So two guys on my podcast did 2 solo albums, and then 2 guys did the other 2, and then Steven and Sonny, they did 2 each, and they released theirs on our episode, and we released ours on their episode. So it was really interesting to do.
So great.
Yeah. And of course, no offense, Peter, but we got stuck with Peter's album.
Listen, it's funny you said that, because I was just going to bring that up. Back then, of course, I didn't love Peter's as much as, Aces to me is still my favorite. Paul's is a close second. Gene's is a little weird. And growing up, Peter's was always last to me. And I'm not even sure why it was last. It just was. And, growing up now that I'm older, I can appreciate Peter's album a lot more than Gene's, believe it or not. Peter's album is a very honest album. There's a lot of great, great songs. Is it a Kiss record? Of course it's not a Kiss record. But it's a damn good rock and roll record. It's a feel-good rock and roll record. Whereas Gene's, you almost can see Gene trying to be different. He's trying to be, cool with all the guest stars he has on there and, doing Wish Upon a Star and all that stuff. It's almost like, not forced, but you could see that he's trying to sell records to be different. Where Peter just said, this is the type of music I love. This is what I'm going to record.
Right. And it's weird that you say that, because honest to God, I listened to Gene's album all the way through today. And I'm listening to this album and I'm going what was he thinking? He's trying to impress everybody. I think what he did with his solo album is right now what Paul is trying to do with Soul Station.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. He wants validation.
Yep. He's trying to...
Paul, after I know Paul pretty well. Like I said, I toured with Kiss, got to hang out with Paul a lot. I was with him every day for almost 4 months. So I really got to know him a little bit. And don't get me wrong, Paul Stanley is a sweetheart, great guy. He's the one who took us on tour. He's the one who knew my band ZO2 and basically made the call to us to see if we would open for them. So, I owe him so much. But Paul is a very, introverted type of person. He's always looking for validation. He does things for those types of reasons. And even reading his book, I felt like, even though it's a great book, I felt like even through the book, he was always looking for validation for things that he was doing, or credit, or taking credit away from other people and trying to put it on himself. Not that he doesn't deserve a lot of credit, but that was just, it's the type of person he is. And that's okay. Everyone's different, but he's the type of person that needs a little bit of that validation. And I agree, this Soul Station project is the way to say, look at this music I can do too.
I'm more than Kiss.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah, and I think that's what Gene was trying to do with his solo album. Like the first 2 songs, like, okay, this is cool. Then you're like, okay, now it's a little weird, and you have the gospel singers on almost every song after the first 2, and it's definitely different. But I like it's amazing, and we could just sit here and talk Kiss for 6 hours. You know what I mean?
God, absolutely. And again, I'm bad. I was just bad mouthing. Just so you know, I love every Kiss record. You know what I mean? Even the ones that I don't love as much as some of the others, and I'm bad mouthing a little. There's still records that I absolutely adore. So even Gene's record, one of my favorite records of all time. It's just I can criticize it because I am a fan, and I can critique it for what it is.
Right, but we don't want anyone that's not a Kiss fan critiquing it, because they don't know everything.
Exactly.
It's like, you can talk shit about your buddies, but to each other, but when someone else talks shit about them, no way, not happening.
No way.
For sure. And I want to talk real quick about your book here. I got the book, actually. Thank you once again. You sent me the book. I read it. It was fantastic. But what really, really got me was the audiobook, narrated by you,
yes,
of course. And I had talked to you about this before, but I want to throw this out there to our listeners. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I probably read about half the books that I have, and I probably listen to about half. And I love autobiographies, and for the most part, I love when the author narrates them, for the most part, because actually there was just one that I downloaded this week. It was a new one, came out and it's another one that I have read the book, and I started listening to it. I had to shut it off after 5 minutes because he was just like it was not good. It was. I don't even want to say what even came into my head about how this recording was. But
I get it. I
yeah,
get it.
and like I'll put yours and Steve Lukather's out there. Absolutely fantastic. The way you read yours and the way Steve did his, it's just like sitting having a beer with the guy, shooting the shit. And I like that. I like the conversational tone, and I like how honest your book was, because there's parts in there that that made me tear up, and you could tell there's parts where I would assume you probably had to stop recording and pick up down the line.
You're 100% right. First of all, thank you so much for the compliment. The compliment you just gave me of, it feels like, we're sitting down having a conversation, is the number one best compliment I can possibly get, not only on my book, but on the audiobook, because it's exactly what I wanted. And I'm not the best author in the world. I'm not the best writer, but what I can do is I can talk in my own voice and I can tell a great story. And that's what I did. I told my life story in my own voice. It's the only voice I have. I wrote every single word in that book. I edited it myself. I did every single thing myself. There's not a word written by someone else like a ghostwriter, because I know a lot of these people do that. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell my story. And what I really wrote the book for, I wrote it for my kids originally. I wasn't even going to release it. I just wanted to have my story on paper from A to Z, and just to tell my life story so my kids had something to read back one day. Unfortunately, my both parents are gone. There's so many questions I would love to ask them about their childhood or their life or growing up, anything. There's so many little things. I never want my kids to have that feeling. They can always go to this book for the rest of their life and find out if they have a question. They can look it up in my book, almost like a little encyclopedia. But moving forward to the actual audiobook, I couldn't agree more. I'm a big audiobook guy too. I'm on the road a lot. So I do love to read a lot when I'm home and when I'm traveling on the trains in Manhattan and stuff. But when I'm on the road in a van or in a car or in a bus, it's hard to read because it gets you nauseous. It's hard.
Right.
So I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. And the thing I can't stand more than anything is an audiobook that's completely unemotional and just flat. And you could tell 10 minutes into an audiobook if the person really wrote the words or not. Because if he's speaking like this, and then the cat went down the street, he's just reading like he's reading off of a teleprompter.
Right.
It's not his words. And that's why I'm so glad you said that about my audiobook. Every word is written by me and read by me. And you're 100% right. There's parts in the book. It's one of the hardest things that I ever did was actually reading the audiobook, because it was mentally and physically draining doing it. It took me a long time to do. And not only to express the emotions of every word and of every story, but just the ups and downs it was almost like reliving my life in a weird way. First when I wrote it, and then when I read the audiobook, it really brought me down those memories and all those emotions again. So you'll hear it, and I'm sure you have, plenty of times in that book where I actually have to stop and kind of restart again.
Right, and that makes it like so real to me when I was listening to it, and like I was almost having to stop a couple times as well. And one point that you brought up, and I think is an excellent point, that you wished you had spoken to your mom and dad about like how it was when they were growing up, and that definitely parallels to what you were saying with your kids, because like your life is totally different of how they're growing up, and your life is totally different how your parents grew up, and it is cool to go back and see, how different things were, and sometimes it's not necessarily a good thing. You know what I mean? How we grew up compared to our parents, and how our kids are growing up compared to us. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. I don't even know if you understand what I'm talking
right.
about.
I couldn't agree more. Listen, it's so nice to have something to reflect on too. Again, even when I started writing the book, I didn't even know I remembered some of the stuff that I wrote in the book. Meaning, it's funny, like when I started writing it, I actually ended the book. I started writing the very end first. And if you read the epilogue of the book, it's me. Basically, I wrote the book when I was doing my Broadway show, The Great Comet of 1812. And I would travel back and forth on the bus into Manhattan. I did 8 shows a week on this show. And it was a grueling schedule. But I had this downtime of this travel back and forth. and I literally wrote the whole entire book on the commuter bus on back and forth from New Jersey to Manhattan every single day. And as I started it, I actually started it on the way to opening night. And I said, you know what? I'm going to reflect on this one day. I want to write this down. So I started writing it backwards almost. I wrote that part first, and then I went all the way back to the beginning. And as I wrote the beginning, the floodgates started opening. As you tell one story about your childhood, you remember other things. And then you remember another thing and another detail. You know, when I'm telling stories about me going to the mall as a kid to buy the new Kiss record, or to go to Ticketron back then. It wasn't even Ticketmaster. It was Ticketron for me. And I would run into the mall to buy concert tickets. Those thoughts, I didn't even know I remembered until I started telling the stories about going to get wrestling tickets for Madison Square Garden and having to get the tickets from Ticketron and not knowing what the seats were until, they showed you on the chart. And, things start opening up as you're telling stories. So it was so therapeutic to tell these stories because it led me back to all of these great times that I had as a kid.
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, as I'm reading this book and listening to it, I'm like, we did that. We used to do that. And just the word Ticketron, like people would be like, what the hell is that?
Right,
now it's
right.
Ticketmaster and Live Nation and all that shit. Like, and when you actually used to have to go stand in line, and if you got there first, you actually got better tickets. Now you have to get online at 10 o'clock, and tickets are sold out to all these friggin' legal scalping bullshit, the StubHub and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stand that. And then remember when they went to like the lottery type system where when you got there they gave the tickets out? The first time I had a experience with that, I was going to get like Poison and Rat, and like one of those tours were playing up near us at Montage Mountain, which you have played there. We'll talk about that as well. So I get there. I had my youngest son with me, and he was only like 5 or 6. So they gave him a ticket too. So there was like 40 people in line ahead of me. So I'm like, all right. But I didn't realize there was like some kind of country concert, not Garth Brooks, like Keith Urban or one of those guys were playing. Tickets were on sale at the same time. So when they pulled out the winning ticket, it was 2 people ahead of me. So I'm like, all them people ahead of me just got fucked. I'm like,
right.
They had to go to the back of the line. So
Yep.
I took my son's ticket. I said, who was the first person in line here? And the one girl's like, me. I'm like, here, take this ticket. I said, you go ahead of me, and I'll take the second ticket back. So at least for that show, the person got, that was there first, got their first thing. But I was like, holy shit, like they just boned all these people.
It was just such a different time. I remember sleeping in the parking lot of the Meadowlands, which is Brendan Byrne Arena back then in New Jersey, and sleeping there to get Kiss Asylum tickets. Now, I'm 10 years old. We're with my friend's parents. I'm 10 years old. We're sleeping in the parking lot because we knew the next morning we had to be first online. But unfortunately, and again, I don't even know how it used to work back then, but just because you were first online did not mean you were getting good tickets, because if they opened those doors 5 minutes later than, Ticketron and open their windows in all the malls across America, you weren't getting good tickets. So sure enough, I was literally first in line at the arena and ran into the box office, got tickets, was so excited. I had never seen Kiss close up before. I was always in the nosebleed seats. And sure enough, as soon as I checked where I was sitting, nosebleed seats again. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Oh, that sucks. So you wasted a whole night staying over in the parking lot.
Yeah. Last time I did it, because I knew it. I always wanted to be front row or second row, and I said the only way to do it is to be first online, and I was first online, and I still got screwed.
That sucks. That's
terrible.
That's terrible for sure. Your early Kiss fandom, when you got into Kiss, how did you first were you? In the book, it kind of said you weren't really totally aware of them when you went to see them, correct?
Right. So in 1979, when I saw Kiss on the Dynasty tour, I was only 5 years old. So I literally almost had no idea what Kiss even was. I actually, if anything, I remember actually being afraid, and my brother reminded me of this recently. I used to be afraid of one of the Kiss commercials on TV, and we were trying to figure out which commercial it was, and we're assuming that it was there was an Alive 2 commercial that used to play. And
Right.
we're thinking that it was that because there was like a gene spitting blood during that. But anyway, the only memory that I even knew of Kiss back then was kind of being afraid of them. But going to Madison Square Garden that night to see them, I didn't even know why we were going. My brother was a fan. He's 5 years older than me, so he was 10 at the time. So we all went to the Garden with my parents, and I really didn't even know why we were going. I was a chubby kid. I wanted to get a hot dog, and that's all I cared about. And then all of a sudden, this sound hit me, and this energy. It wasn't even just the Kiss, the sound. It was the energy of all those people. I had never been in an arena before. I had never been in a stadium before. And the electricity in the air that night, from note one to the end of the show, I'll never forget it. I get chills even talking about it. And it just started my fandom. So I got home that night and immediately had to know more about this band. My brother gave me his copy of Double Platinum. And from there, I just studied that record for the next few months and just memorized everything I could about Kiss.
Yeah, and then you ruined the album.
Yeah, so as you know in the book, I tell a funny story how, again, you got to understand I'm 5 years old. So this record looks like a beautiful mirror to me. So every time I would touch it, and anyone who's ever had the Double Platinum record, when you touched it, you used to get smear marks on it, especially my greasy Italian fingers. So I would get smear marks all over this record, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't clean it. So, of course, I ran to my mom, and she handed me some Windex. So I started spraying it with Windex. I wiped it down with a paper towel, or Scott towel is what I used to call it. And sure enough, the fingerprints came off. So I would repeat that process anytime anyone would ever touch the record. Obviously, the record is not really a mirror or real platinum. It's cardboard. And, after, a week or two, it was getting waterlogged, and it completely ruined the whole record, which I still have to this day, one of my most prized possessions.
That's awesome. Yeah. And right around that same time, you discovered wrestling as well. And I remember that. I mean, I never have went to a wrestling match, but they used to be on Saturday morning here. On when my grandparents were the first ones to get cable, so I would go shoot over there in the morning to watch wrestling, and but they were all the cool guys, and that you've had on your wrestling with Joey Licious.
Right, same thing with me. Saturday mornings were wrestling. So again, to do the timeline back in the early '80s here, we're talking. Kiss was my everything. So now I'm, 1981, 82, 83. I'm 8 years old, 9 years old, going on 10. And Kiss is my world. I don't know anything else. My parents are divorced. I have no real male influence in the house besides my brother. And, Kiss is my everything. But, at that point, I don't even think I've ever heard Kiss speak. I don't think I saw Kiss Meets the Phantom yet. I never saw any interviews. There was no, you couldn't go on YouTube to see an interview with Kiss. There were no live footage, of them talking or anything. Obviously, I heard them talking on a Live 1 and a Live 2, but nothing like interview-wise, no personality. All I knew was the music and that they were basically like superheroes. So one morning when I turned on, it was Channel 9 back in New York, and I saw wrestling for the first time, WWF wrestling. I was completely blown away. I was, entranced. I couldn't take my eyes off the television. And it wasn't the wrestling that caught me. It was the interviews. It was the promos that they were cutting. These crazy guys screaming at the camera at one another, telling them that they're going to rip their heads off. It couldn't have been a better thing for a 9, 10-year-old boy to see.
Oh, absolutely. And then, and then you get into the stories, and we did the same thing. You want to do it. So you and your buddies, you're all beating the shit out of each other all the time, trying all this crazy shit.
So just like Kiss, again, I was never a person, for some reason, I don't know why, everyone has different personalities. I never wanted to just watch it and enjoy it. When I'm addicted to something, I have to do it. I want to do it. When I saw Peter Criss's drums go up on his riser, I said, that's what I have to do. And I immediately started playing the drums right after that. Same thing with wrestling. When I saw wrestling, I said, okay, I have to do that. I don't want to just watch it. I do want to watch it, but when I watch it, I'm studying it. And sure enough, like you said, my friends and I, we created our own wrestling league, and I turned a room in my house which had no furniture in it. It was like an extra room in my house, and we put mats down from wall to wall, and we called it Madison Square Room. And we would literally beat the crap out of each other every day after school. We didn't know wrestling was fake or,
No.
staged. We would literally body slam each other and headlock and punch, and
Yeah.
we would really have wrestling matches, and it was the best time in the world.
Yeah, and it's insane, like, that and like all kinds of different stuff we used to do. Like, it's a wonder, like right now, if you seen your kids doing that, you'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you'd go out of your mind. Not thinking back, 40 years ago, holy shit, I was doing that and worse. But it's, that just shows the totally different world that we live in now. And speaking of drums, you saw Peter Criss, and I like how you do. You break it down into the frozen moments. I really like that. And because it just gives you like a boom, like a snapshot of this is something that I want to do. And I'm going to let the people out there read the book or listen to the book of how you got your first drum set, because that is an amazing story. And I thought it was one of them that I was like, holy shit, that was so freaking cool. But once you started playing, it just went from there, right? And one thing that really got me too was I forget which band you were in, but you didn't even have a drum set and you had to learn the songs for them. So you learned them by doing air drums.
And that's 100% accurate. And it's so funny. Everything always goes back to my childhood, even today. Like I teach drums all day long. I have dozens and dozens of students, and a lot of my students, unfortunately, don't have drum sets yet, whether they can't afford drum sets, or their parents don't want a drum set in their house, or they live in an apartment and they can't play. I always tell them this story, and it's the story of back when I was a kid, my first drum set was broken and it was basically unplayable. But I still could play the drums at this point, but I had no drums to practice on because my family was struggling financially, and they just couldn't afford to buy me a drum set. And what I would do, like you said, I would literally air drum. And anyone who's ever played drums knows that, 80% of drumming is coordination and physicality. So if you could get your coordination and your independence of your limbs down, you could transfer it to an actual drum set pretty easily. So what I would do is I would literally sit on my bed, hanging off my bed, sitting with my feet on the floor, and I would mimic all the moves of what a drum set would be in front of me, hitting the air. And it actually, believe it or not, created great independence and muscle control, because when you hit a drum, the stick stops. But if you're playing in the air, it takes a lot more muscle control to stop that stick and bring it back up rather than have that natural bounce off a drum set. So for about a year, I had to do this, and it actually turned out to make me a better drummer.
That's cool. Yeah, and I never thought of that, because you have the natural return when you hit
Right.
a drum or a cymbal, but you don't have that when you're doing the air. You do have to bring that back up. That's a great point. I love I could keep a beat for like about 3 minutes. I'm a great air drummer, but I love the when you got the cage drum set.
Yes.
Because one of my co-hosts, BC,
right.
he was a drummer. He was in a band. They recorded it like a demo and stuff. And I remember going up to his house, and like the one bedroom was just the whole cage. I'm like, how the fuck do you even get behind there? You had to like, with the size I am now, I would never be able to get back there. But like, I'm like, holy shit, this thing took up the whole goddamn room. And I love the story of just how you got that. And also just talk about that briefly. But I want you to talk about also too how you transitioned from that to the smaller kit that you play now, and the differences between the two.
So it's funny. It's funny how we're talking about all of this stuff, because this was the part of my book that I really thought people would be bored out of their minds about. Who wants to hear my childhood? Who wants to hear growing up in the 80s and running to a record store and buying a record and my Walkman and me watching wrestling on TV and my first drum set and all that stuff? It was really kind of just not a throwaway, but I just, it was my life, so I had to write it. But I didn't think anyone would care about it. I always thought people would care about, and which we'll get into later in the conversation, my bands that were successful and touring with Kiss and my TV show and all this big accolades that happened in my life, where, believe it or not, more of the compliments of my book are from the first half rather than the second half. Because the first half, like you said so many times, is very relatable. It's anyone who grew up in the 80s anyone who was a big fan of anything pop culture in the 80s, or a musician, wannabe musician, a person who always wanted to play an instrument, can relate to all of the little stories that I tell in the book. And this story about my drum cage, every drummer that I ever talked to since I wrote this book, it's one of their favorite stories because they went through the same experience. So obviously drummers in the 80s always had big, gigantic drum kits, from Eric Carr to Alex Van Halen to Scott Rockenfield to Robert Sweet from Stryper. These guys had massive drum sets. And those are the drummers that I grew up loving. So, of course, just like everything else I said, when I see something, that's what I have to do. So when I think I remember seeing Scott Rockenfield's drum kit in, maybe it was the Silent Lucidity video, one of those videos, and he had this big cage, and I said, oh my God, that's what I have to get. And at the time, I'm living in Manhattan in a small apartment. I'm playing gigs all around Manhattan, and who's ever played gigs, whether it's in Manhattan or any small city you're from, knows that these clubs cannot accommodate a kit like that. So I would literally walk into these clubs with this drum cage, and the owner would look at me like I'm an absolute maniac. And, 9 times out of 10, I couldn't even fit it on the stage. I would either have to set up off the stage, or I would have to play, some kind of completely broken up drum set because it wouldn't fit on the stage. So it was a nightmare to lug around. So it kind of forced me into playing a smaller kit. It wasn't my design at first. It just forced me realizing I didn't want to have to lug this kit around anymore, where I couldn't even use it most of the time. I just wind up playing a 4-piece kit.
Okay, that's cool. Because I remember going to clubs and stuff in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe a couple years when I was underage, maybe. But, that's another story. But, and you're right. You would, once in a while, you would see someone come in and they would have the cage. But then they're, the rest of the guys in the band would have to kind of be just on the sides or have, maybe
right.
3 feet in front of the drums. But, and I just remember this one band. They were called DeBeal. They were from Canada. And you know how Stryper is, they're black and yellow, like the fluorescent stuff.
Yep.
They were fluorescent green and black. And their drummer played this drum solo with friggin' baseball bats. It was insane. And BC and I always talk about that. But you're right, because these clubs, it's not an arena for sure. And I can see how that would make you transition down. And was it a big transition for you? I mean, I'm sure you could do just as well. Obviously, you could do just as much on a 4-piece kit as you can on a 10-piece kit.
Yeah, I mean, any other drummers that are listening, they'll know it's not different at all. You're just doubling up on stuff, and there's pluses to a big kit and pluses to a small kit. The pluses of a big kit is not only that you get all these different sounds with all these toms and these crazy cymbals, but you get to play. You can be busier on a bigger kit, whereas a smaller kit, you strip it down and you learn how to play for the song more. So transitioning to the smaller kit actually made me a better drummer. I grew up, one of my first drum sets was a big drum set because I loved Eric Carr so much and I wanted to mimic what he had. So, I always was a very busy drummer back in the late 80s. And when I was, teenage years, I'm sure all the guitarists listening to, you want to shred, you want to play fast, you want to be busy. But then you realize, okay, let me slow everything down and play for the song. And that's really where I became a better drummer, when I stripped down my drum kit and started playing more for the song rather than to impress the other musicians in the audience.
Right. Let's get into your club days here with Playground, and you were in Kiss Nation, the Kiss tribute band. Get into that a little bit for us.
So, growing up, again, we're in the 80s here. We're in the late 80s. I started gigging when I was about 13, 14 years old. So I'm in these clubs, like you mentioned earlier, way underage, playing with guys in my band who were way older than me, because I could never find people my age to play with that were my level. So I would always play up. I would have to lie about my age usually to get into bands. And, it's just the growing up process. And it's so funny, when I was writing this book, I was reflecting back and remembering, thinking to myself, this band is not very good, but I'm going to use the experiences and the heartache and all the stuff that I'm going through in this band to make sure that I learn and not do it the next time. And I know it's hard for kids to think this way, but I really always thought about things that way. I always knew every step that I was taking in every band I was in was a learning process. Was I always hoping that band would succeed and be the next Bon Jovi? Of course I did. Or the next Kiss? Of course I did. But, in the back of my mind, I knew that was probably not going to happen. And I knew everything that I was doing, whether it was my first recording experience or my first sound check or my first live performance, I knew every step along the way was another stepping stone to get to my reality, which was hopefully becoming the drummer in Kiss one day.
Awesome. One thing that I liked about when you got into Kiss Nation, I'll skip ahead to them real quick, that you were Eric Carr in Kiss Nation. And we've seen, who hasn't, that is a Kiss fan, hasn't seen any, a ton of Kiss tribute bands, but very few have Eric as the drummer.
Absolutely. Again, so leading, timeline-wise, the only reason that I got into a Kiss tribute band was because I was starting to get burnt out from doing what I just mentioned, which was going through all these bands, the process. Then it became the music business to me because I was starting to deal with lawyers, and I was on a small record label for a little while with a band, and it became not fun to me. It really just became about the business, and I wasn't enjoying playing my drums anymore. So whenever I'm not enjoying something, I always think back and say, okay, why am I playing the drums to begin with? And the answer is always Kiss. So I didn't even realize what I was looking for. I was just looking in the music papers one day to see what was out there and available to me as a drummer. And I came across this ad, and I had to look at it 2, 3, 4 times to even realize that it was real. And it said, Kiss tribute band doing Creatures of the Night era Kiss, looking for drummer to be Eric Carr. And anyone who's read my book, or hopefully will read this book after the interview, will know what a tremendous influence Eric is on me. And Peter is the reason why I play the drums, because he was the first drummer that I've ever seen. But Eric, growing up in the 80s, became my ultimate drummer. And to see this ad in this newspaper that wanted someone to be Eric Carr, I couldn't pass it up. I said, you know what? This is what I have to do. This is the next step in my career. Of course, I knew it wasn't going to bring me to the place where I wanted to be, the next superstar drummer. But I knew I had to start having fun playing my drums again. And I couldn't think of anything more fun than dressing up as Eric Carr and doing an 80s type Creatures of the Night Kiss set in a Kiss tribute band.
It's like it was meant to be. It really is
freaky.
And when you were in Kiss Nation, did you guys ever play the Kiss Expo? I know ZO2 did, but has Kiss Nation ever played one of the Kiss Expos, the New York, New Jersey?
We played the New York, New Jersey Kiss Expo.
I thought so.
At least once, maybe twice. I think we played maybe in 2001, maybe, or 2002. I'm not sure. We definitely appeared a couple times. I'm pretty sure we played it at least once.
I thought so, because we used to go to all of them, and I remember seeing ZO2 there, and actually, I met and said hello to you, that I was enjoying ZO2. I'm sure you remember me.
Of course.
Yeah, but me and BC we were talking about that, and I'm like I know Kiss Nation played there, and I because he's like, yeah, they're the one that had Eric as the drummer, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, well, that was Joey Cassata, and he's like, holy shit. So I just wanted to confirm that you guys did play there, and I was like almost positive that you guys did play that. And when you were in that, what were some of the favorite songs that you like to play when you guys were playing with Kiss Nation?
Oh my gosh! I mean, I could literally sit. Anyone who wants to do another tribute with me, I'm ready to go. I love playing Kiss songs more than anything in the world. But this era of Kiss, again, Kiss Animalized Live Uncensored is basically my Bible.
Oh.
That's the video that I wore out 2,000 times in my lifetime. Every day after school, I would come home and play this video, memorize this video, play every track to that video, mimic it on the drums. I'd sit in front of my TV. I'd put the TV in front of my drum set with my VCR and play the whole entire concert front to back rewind it, and do it again.
Yeah. And I was just
So-
going to say that the worst part about that was rewinding the tape for you to watch it again.
Oh, it's torture. So,
Yeah.
all those, especially because we were doing this era of Creatures of the Night, we played all the songs like the Animalized uncensored versions.
That's the
that was,
best.
again, all of our Bibles. So whenever we played, even, the classics, whether it was Detroit Rock City or Cold Gin, we would play the versions like on Animalized Live Uncensored or even the Sydney bootleg. So all of the classics, we would not only, I would love playing the classics, but I really love them because we were doing them in the style that Eric Carr played.
Right.
But of course,
Yeah, and they were
songs
different.
like Creatures of the Night we used to play all the time. King of the Mountain we would play. We would play a lot of rarities that were such great fun drum songs that, I loved every song we played. So it's so hard for me to choose.
Hey, did you sing Young and Wasted?
I never sang Young and Wasted live. I don't know why we didn't do it. We used to do Black Diamond all the time. I sang that live. I even sang Beth live a couple times. But for some reason, we never did Young and Wasted. We did Fits Like a Glove, where I did all the backing vocals that Eric did, like on the Animalized Uncensored
They're
video.
fantastic.
But we never did Young and Wasted. I'm not sure why.
Oh, I figured you would have been all over that.
You're so right. I don't even know what I must have got outvoted or something. I don't even know why.
That's crazy. Yeah, and that Kiss Live Uncensored, you talk to a lot of 80s Kiss fans, and I love I'm like you. I like all Kiss stuff. Even the present stuff. People shit all over Monster and Sonic Boom. I think Monster is better personally, but I love the 80s stuff because that Animalized Uncensored. It was I had that on beta tape.
Woo!
When that
Amazing.
came out. Yeah. and I watched the shit out of that, and that was one because even now when I'm listening to say Animalize the album, I will find myself doing the extra Paul stuff that he'll do during the song, or like what Gene does on Fits Like a Glove, and I could picture Eric's background vocals on Fits Like a Glove on that, and that's how I hear that in my head even when I'm listening to the regular album versions.
Same with me. I remember seeing that for the first time and watching Eric sing Young and Wasted. And the very first thing I did was run to my Lick It Up record to see, oh my God, I never realized Eric sang this. And of course, he doesn't sing it on the record.
Right.
But I thought maybe he did, and I just never realized it. But yeah, I can recite any of the dialogue. I can recite all the stories, all the different versions. You give me a version of a Kiss song to play, and tell me the bootleg, and I'll play it for you.
That's just kick ass. That's like the early '80s Kiss Bible. That Live Uncensored, absolutely fantastic. Although I'm not really sure why Paul had to have a guitar solo on that, but
do 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 do.
Yeah.
Do 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 do. Do do do. And then he messes up. He goes,
yeah. Oh,
there we
yeah. But I do love that Shattered Mirror Warlock guitar, though.
Yeah, and even the solo. I mean, I remember being a kid loving it, especially when he splits the crowd and he starts doing all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And, everything, like I said, anything they did back then, it was golden to me. And it still is.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to watch. I haven't watched that in a while. I'm going to have to watch it now. I'll probably watch it time. I go, what are you watching that for? It's a long story. And actually, Kiss Nation, that kind of planted the seeds for ZO2, correct?
Right. So again, I joined Kiss Nation to have fun again because my music career was stale. I wasn't having fun anymore. And it just goes to show you, it's the lesson for everyone. Don't follow trends. Don't do things because it's work and it's hard. When you're enjoying something and you're doing it for the right reasons and for the right passion that you have behind it, good things happen. And that leads me into this next story. So the singer for the Kiss Nation band, his name was Paulie Z, and he played Paul Stanley in Kiss Nation. And it just so happens that him and his brother David Z were starting their own band right around the time I joined Kiss Nation. And they asked me to jam with them and maybe be the drummer in this band. And I really had no desire to do it because, like I said, I was burnt out of the music business. I was having a blast doing Kiss Nation. Kiss Nation did so many great things. We had our VH1 special on VH1 called Mock Rock, which you can find on my YouTube page, Joey Cassata, at Joey Cassata YouTube. You can watch the whole episode. It's literally us on VH1. Gene and Paul appear in the video. They watch us play at a performance at the Whiskey A Go Go in LA. It was just we were having the time of our life. I was living my dream in a tribute band. I never thought it would be possible. So the original music scene for me at that point was kind of not even on my mind. But when Paulie Z is a very he can persuade people to do what he wants you to do. So he tortured me enough that he finally got me to go down and jam with them. And the first time we jammed, we just gelled. Something about it just felt right. The songs weren't amazing. Nothing was amazing yet, but something just felt right. And it just turned into a little side project that I was doing while I was in Kiss Nation. And the side project turned into ZO2. And that's the band that really became my most successful project.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, we saw you guys at the Kiss Expos, and actually we did catch you when you ended up touring with Kiss at when you played Scranton Montage Mountain. We were at that show. For people out there that are unfamiliar with ZO2, seriously, check them out. It is great, just straight up hard rock music. Paulie Z's voice is absolutely insane. It's just crazy. I don't even know how to describe how he sings. Just fantastic. David Z on bass. And I was listening to some of the songs today. Like, there's bass lines in some of those songs. I'm like, holy shit, like, crazy. And you guys
he was a phenomenal bass player.
Yeah, and you guys seem so locked in playing.
Again, it's so funny. Like I said earlier, when you do things for the right reasons, good things happen. And, we just started playing, and it just locked in, and all the pieces just fell into place. It was so – fate led me all the way up to this point. I'm so convinced of fate and things happening for the right reasons, and you living your life for a certain reason. And everything that I had done up until this point in my life led me right to this point, even playing in a Kiss tribute band. And it led me to ZO2. And when we started playing together, something just became magical, and it became locked in. And we recorded our first record on our own dime. We spent over $35,000 on this record and promotion and recording and all this stuff. And we didn't even know why we were doing it. What could you possibly do in 2002 with an original record? There was almost no room for it. No one was doing $40,000 original records at that point. And I was even against it. I was against doing it for laying out all that money because I was supporting my family at that time. And but the Z brothers, they convinced me to do it. They laid out all the money on their credit cards, and we made this record. And as fate would have it, our manager at the time got the record into the hands of Paul Stanley. And it just so happens that the Rock the Nation tour was shortly starting, and Brides of Destruction, Nikki Sixx's band, who was supposed to be the third band on the bill with Kiss and Poison, rumor has it that they got dropped from the tour or they backed out from the tour. It almost doesn't matter. But as fate would have it, they were no longer a part of the tour. And Kiss was looking for a third act. And at the same day or same week that they were looking for another act, Paul Stanley had our record in his hand. Listened to it, loved it, and invited us on the tour.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And one thing I want to ask you about in your albums, I have Tuesdays and Thursdays and Ain't That Beautiful. For some reason, I couldn't find my Casino Logic CD today, which God only knows where that is. Like the packaging is fantastic on these CDs. The inside of Tuesdays and Thursdays is laid out like a calendar. And all the lyrics are like in each, it'd be like in a month. But on the both of these albums, and I'm sure it's Casino Logic as well, it has Paulie Z guitars, vocals, and passion, David Z bass, vocals, and persistence, and Joey Cassata drums and patience. What's the scoop with that?
So I'm sure, obviously, you probably know more than anyone because you've read my book. But being in a band with two brothers, it's not an easy thing to do. And what I mean by that is, there's a couple reasons why. One, I'm always outvoted because they're always going to vote together. But they also fight like brothers. So they were constantly at each other's throats, whether it was arguing over a sandwich or a girl or the song or the arrangement. So I literally was they used to call me the judge because we would be in the van traveling across the country, and I would literally like pretend to hit the gavel on the dashboard and say, "Okay, court is in session," because I would have to moderate their new debate or discussion or argument. And it just became a thing where I had to have patience to deal with these mental patients that I was dealing with.
That's great. And this ZO2 morphed into the Z-Rock show.
We're a Brooklyn band. It's rock and roll we live. But to pay the rent, we gotta play for kids. Are you ready? Are you ready to start the show? Z-Rock coming, here we go.
Which I have to tell you, when I first watched this show, I had no idea what to expect. I know you guys did the kids stuff, but I had no idea how the show was going to go, and I never heard of the network that it was on, and I'm like, okay. And then the first episode, David and Joey hook up with these two girls and their moms of the two of the kids at the party, and here's these girls with their boobs hanging out, and I'm like, okay, this is not a network television show here. And and before that, like the F-bomb was thrown out a couple times and stuff like that, and I'm like, all right, I'm down with this because I like the I don't know, I won't like the realness of it, because you could tell that you guys weren't just three guys off the street that they threw together in a band to make a television show. You could tell that you guys were friends in a band before the show was made. And I got to tell you, these shows, you know who I thought of when I was watching these shows? You guys are like the rock band Sopranos, because all you guys do, you fucking eat on every show.
So again, like I mentioned fate earlier, everything happens for a reason. And so, the story behind ZO2, we would really play kids' birthday parties during the day. We would play children's music, but, we would rock it up a little bit. We would play Beatles songs and stuff. But, for kids, we would do kids' birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, communions, anything we could do. And that's how we paid. We really paid for the whole KISS tour that way. Luckily, KISS did pay us for the tour. We got paid pretty well, but we were still losing money at the end of the day because it costs a fortune to be on the road, whether it's gas or your RV or tolls or food, whatever it was. And we paid for the whole tour by doing kids' birthday parties. And most people don't really believe that or think that it was true, but it was 100% true. David and Paulie were the Z Brothers for a long time before that, and I had just started getting into the kid music world. So we would do that all the time. And as fate would have it, we were playing a kid's birthday party as the Z Brothers, and we looked like ourselves. We looked like a rock band, but we were playing kids music. And a person at the party walked over to us and said, "Hey, this is crazy. What you guys look like, rock and rollers. You look like Aerosmith. What are you doing playing, the Wiggles music? What are you guys crazy?" So we said, "We're actually a rock band too. We're playing BB King's in Times Square later. I think it was either later that night or the day after. Why don't you come down and check us out?" And he was like, "Yeah, you know what? I think I will." We didn't think anything of it. We just wanted another body in the audience. So we would invite everyone to our shows. So as fate would have it, we played the show, and this person from the little kid's birthday party the day prior comes over to us and said, "Guys, you guys were tremendous." And we were like, "Oh, thanks so much for coming. We appreciate it." We didn't think anything of it. He's like, "Listen, I'm an agent at William Morris, which is one of the biggest agencies in the world. They rep everyone you can imagine. We have to do something with you guys." So, of course, we're immediately over, okay, we got to get on a tour. We're going to get on another tour. Let's get on tour with Van Halen. Let's go on tour with this band. He was like, "Well, unfortunately, I'm in the television division. I'm not in the concert division." So we were like, "Okay, why don't we do a TV show then?" He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" We're like, "Well, we do this kids show in the daytime. We're a rock band at night. I'm sure we could do something with it." Sure enough, the guy said, "Sure, write us a little treatment. Come up with a little storyline based on what you guys really have gone through, and we'll see what happens." We did it. We sent it to them. Magic happened. They made a pilot for the show, and we got picked up by network. It was that crazy.
And I can't help from laughing just thinking about like some of the episodes and the characters. You have Neil, the gay club owner that is in love with Polly but won't admit that he's gay. Like the one part he goes, I hurt my neck. He's like, oh, what happened? I hurt my neck trying to suck my own dick, and he's like, I got this close, it's like 2 feet away. Like stuff like that. I was just like, holy shit, like that's just crazy. And you have Joan Rivers and your manager Dina. She was amazing and hot as well. And the guests you guys have had on that show was fantastic. The ones with Dave Navarro were hilarious. Like I'm sure he's not like a total dick like that in real life, but like he came off like, holy shit, this guy is an ass.
Again, it was written like that.
Yeah.
The show was scripted, well, semi-scripted, which meant was the storylines were semi-based on things that would really happen to us throughout our career. But the dialogue and all of that stuff was almost all improv, especially for the three of us. We're not actors. We would just kind of say what came natural to us in the situations that they put us in. So the producers of the show would kind of have this outline of, okay, we're in a club right now, and we have to figure out how to get you guys over to here from over to here. Get the storyline moving, get to that point. So we would literally just start talking and doing lines and kind of playing off each other. And that's how the show was written. We would literally write it on set while we're acting. And then they would throw these comedians and these rock stars into the scenes with us as a crazy, exaggerated versions of themselves. Obviously, the Dave Navarro character was an exaggerated version of him being like a douchey character.
Yeah.
Where, just so you know, he's a sweetheart, great guy.
Yeah, I heard he was a really nice guy, but it was cool how he was portrayed in that, though.
Yeah,
he played
and
it
even
well.
the producers for him, his dialogue wasn't written either. He was all improv, but the producers would say, okay, listen, you're going to be an asshole. You're going to do this. Here's what you have to do. You're going to badmouth this. You're going to say this to this guy, and but just do it your way. And that's kind of how the show was done.
That's cool, and it seemed natural. And one thing that I like kind of laughed at when you were talking about the show is that you said the hardest thing was not to look at the camera,
especially at first. We got used to it after a while, but we were, like I said, not actors. We were, we always said to us in every interview we ever did, we're not actors, we're reacting. So when you put someone like Joan Rivers in front of us and she's telling funny stories or crazy jokes, we would just react like we were, really having a conversation with her. The only hard part was either not blocking the camera or looking into the camera. And, again, we got used to that a couple episodes in, but that was the only thing that was hard for us. We were never shy in front of the camera. We would never stumble over our lines in front of the camera because it was just us speaking. I can't speak like a rocket scientist, but I can sure enough speak like Joey from Brooklyn. So, you know what I mean? So it was easy for us. It was just blocking and lighting, and that's the type of stuff that you have to get used to.
Right. I'm sure that helped you out when you started doing your wrestling with Joey Licious as well. You had that experience of doing a TV show and watching how they're directed and everything for, when down the road you were getting into that, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I really enjoyed the show. I thought it was well written. I was like, when I got done with season 2, I'm like, oh, that's right. He said in the book that it ended then, and that was that sucked because I was like, where are these guys going to go from here? It kind of reminded me of Sopranos for the eating, in Seinfeld as well, because someone always fucks up something.
Absolutely. I mean, we used to tell people it's basically like Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld meets Spinal Tap, and that's really what it was like. It was this crazy band that we were always either self-sabotaging ourselves because we would get into this predicament that we were about to succeed, but then all of a sudden, Paulie would do something stupid, or Dave would get caught with the wrong girl, or I would get into a fight with someone, and we would blow our chances. So that was basically the premise of the show. Of course, in real life, we weren't like that. We were succeeding. We had our own TV show. We were on tour with Kiss. While we were filming the TV show, we would go off and play shows with the Scorpions and Sammy Hagar and Cinderella and all these crazy bands. We were living the dream. We really were. We were succeeding beyond all of our wildest imaginations. And even for season 3, there was so much new stuff that was going to happen. Gene and Paul were probably going to come on for season 3. There was going to be a storyline where we're thinking of that Gene and Paul were literally fighting with each other the whole episode. And, we were trying to not get Kiss to break up, and we were trying to save Kiss. It was going to be more of the same times 100.
Oh, that'd be so freaking awesome, definitely. And one more person I want to mention on the show, John Popper. He played an awesome role. I just loved his deviousness and on that on the show, just like an ultimate villain. And like Dina was always hooking up with him.
Right. I mean, for anyone, again, I'm assuming maybe a lot of your listeners don't know the show. For anyone who has never seen the show, it's the three of us as ourselves with all of the guest stars you can imagine, comedians from Joan Rivers to Gilbert Gottfried, and then you have rock stars like John Popper and Dave Navarro, Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, all of these people on the show playing themselves in cameo situations. We did 2 seasons. It was on the IFC channel for 2 seasons. You can see all the episodes streaming on my YouTube channel right now. I think it's on Amazon Prime too, but it's not available right now for some reason. I think it's probably some kind of contractual confliction or something. But you can go to my YouTube channel at Joey Cassata and see all of the episodes of Z-Rock right now.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, guys out there, seriously check it out. It's freaking hilarious. Like you will absolutely be laughing out loud watching this show. It's just it's crazy. It's one might say zany. You don't hear that word thrown out there too much, but it's really good. So now I'm gonna jump back because you guys toured with Kiss before the show, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I do remember in the show that is mentioned. I thought I liked the camaraderie you guys had. You had lunch with Gene almost every day, and interacting with the other band members and stuff. But one thing I liked was you guys fucking smoking them in wiffle ball.
It's so funny. It's a story I've told so many times, but it's so true. So when we got the Kiss tour, you got to understand we're young, we're these wide-eyed deers going into the dream come true. We're all 3 of us, our favorite bands were Kiss. Paulie, just like me, and Dave too, grew up Kiss fanatics. So, us getting our first major tour, we were already pretty popular around New York, playing clubs and stuff like that, but we weren't a national band by any means. We didn't have a record deal. We had nothing. So for us to get a Kiss tour, an unsigned band, still to this day, I'm going to bet the only unsigned band to ever tour with Kiss. Not just do a show. We did a whole tour. We did almost over 40 dates with them. And, for us to go into that, we went there literally saying to ourselves, this is the dream come true. So we had such a spark of energy. Kiss, of course, had been around already for, 30 years at that point. Poison is already a crazy established band. These acts were big, they were big stars already. So not that I don't want to say they were going through the motions, but they've been there and they've done it. We've absolutely not been there and done nothing. So when we got there, it was like, wow. We saw everything with these fresh rainbow colored glasses on. And I think our enthusiasm and our youthfulness was rubbing off on those guys every day. We would come into catering and, Gene was sitting there at lunch. And, Gene is intimidating. No one would go sit with him, and he'd be sitting there by himself. We would jump on the table and bear hug him. And we were kids, and we were having the times of our lives. And, at first they were like, hey, whoa, what's going on here? But eventually they came around and, Gene would come looking for us every day to have lunch and debate with us and play wiffle ball, like you said, which is the story I'll tell in a second. But, even Paul and obviously Eric and Tommy were on that tour. Even Paul would, during sound check every day, we were the only ones in the audience, and we would literally scream out, The Oath, play Under the Rose, or, play Nowhere to Run. And they would start playing these songs for us. And we would get our own private show every day where it was so bad that the production would have to come over to us and say, guys, listen, we're like an hour behind because these guys are performing for you. They love it. You're like their best friends now. Can you please leave them alone after a half an hour, please? So it just we really became friendly with them. And I'm sure everyone has the same story if you're on a tour with someone. But if we only did 1 or 2 shows with them, we would have never had the experience that we had. We lived with them for 3 or 4 months, so we really became friendly with them. We ate every day with them. We played with them. We played cards with them. Ricky was on our bus every day playing poker. Like I said, we had lunch with Gene every day. Paul would throw picks and knock us out in the audience every day. And, we would play wiffle ball in the parking lot. That's just something we did. I've always been a big wiffle ball fan. And one day, Paul was just standing around, watching the game. And, you would think no one would go up to Paul Stanley to ask him to play because it's Paul Stanley. We didn't care. I ran over to him and said, "Hey, Paul, you want to play?" And sure enough, he was waiting for someone to come and ask him. And he jumped at the chance. He's like, "Sure, I would love to play." It quickly became Kiss versus ZO2 in wiffle ball. And Gene and Eric came out. I don't know where Tommy was. Tommy wasn't around yet. And it was literally me, Paulie Z, and David Z versus Gene, Paul, and Eric in a game of wiffle ball.
How did they do overall? I'm sure you guys smoked them, right?
Well, I mean, not to brag, but I played wiffle ball my whole life. I grew up in Brooklyn, so I'm curving, I'm throwing sliders, I'm throwing risers, and the Kiss, they're not the most athletic band.
No,
in the world.
you wouldn't think so.
They're older guys, they're
Yep.
rock stars. They probably never played a game of wiffle ball in their life. So, I did go a little easy on them, but sure enough, Kiss didn't get a hit off of us.
They didn't rise to it.
Actually, they did get one hit. So Paul pitched to Paul Stanley, my singer Paulie Z. And one of the funny parts in the book, I tell the story of, he throws a strike to Paul Stanley, and he gets cocky, and he tells Paul, he goes, that was my love gun. Here comes my destroyer. And Paul is a wise ass too, Paul Stanley. He goes, "Oh, is that right?" He said, "Just so you know, I could throw you off this tour at any time." So sure enough, Paulie Z lobbed the next pitcher up to Paul Stanley, and I think Paul got his only hit of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome though. It's cool to hear that that they did interact with you guys. They did welcome you guys, and that they and you don't think of Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley playing wiffle ball. And there's in Joey's book here that I'm actually holding in my hand, there's a ton of pictures in the book, and a couple of them are with Paul and Gene playing wiffle ball, and and there's a bunch of pictures in the middle, but there's also pictures all the way throughout the book, like in all the chapters too. So it's fantastic. So I would recommend listening to the audiobook, but also buy the book because it's so much more.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of pictures out there floating around of Gene and Paul playing wiffle ball. So
No.
yeah, you'll definitely see. Again, I didn't want to show the typical stuff. The behind, as much as I loved playing with Kiss every night, we got to open for Kiss every single night. It was amazing. But the things that I enjoyed even more than that were these behind the stage things. And listen, I've heard stories over the years of other bands that toured with Kiss that they weren't like this with them. And I have a feeling that it was just the way our personalities were. We were kids. We were so excited to be there. We didn't care, to interrupt Gene while he was doing an interview. We didn't care if Paul was talking to his wife or his son. We would go over there and just hang out and have fun. So I think that those personalities rubbed off on them, and they really had a good time with us.
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling too, that like I think that they interacted with you guys too because you were so real. You guys were just like, you wanted to hang out. I'm sure there was an intimidation, when you first met them, but then I think, hey, you guys are from Brooklyn. Hey, fuck it. Let's go,
Right.
let's go, talk to these guys. If they blow us off and don't want to be bothered, that's fine. But, maybe, just maybe they'll, loosen up and hang and, let you into their circle a little bit. And that's exactly what happened.
Exactly. You got to understand, these guys had their yes men around them for probably 30 years at this point, telling them yes to everything they wanted to hear, agreeing with everything they've ever said, laughing at every joke they've ever told. When we came aboard and started arguing with them or, debated with them or didn't laugh at Gene's stupid jokes, at first, I think they were taken aback a little. They were like, oh, what are these Papa's kids? But then they realized we're just not like these goofy fanboys. We're here to hang out and have fun with you. We're like you now. We're kind of on that same playing field, which is something that, turned out to be amazing. Like I said, I think it made them open up to us even more. There's another funny story in my book where Paulie Z from my band asks Gene, "Hey Gene, why did you tune differently in the 80s songs than you did in the 70s songs?" And for anyone who's a musician knows that Kiss tuned differently in the 70s they tuned down a little bit to get a bluesier sound. And then in the 80s, starting with Creatures, I believe, they started tuning in regular tuning. So Paulie Z asked Gene this one day while we were sound checking. Gene just was out there jamming with us. And Gene got defensive. He's like, "Well, we never did that. Maybe you're a CD player, plays a little bit slower, creating this weird effect." And we started laughing because obviously we were in the Kiss tribute band. Paulie Z knows the different tunings that Kiss uses. Everyone knows the different tunings. You don't even have to be a musician and probably have read somewhere that Kiss tuned differently in the 70s. So Tommy Thayer comes over. We're like, "Tommy, listen, you got to settle this debate with us. Is it true that Kiss tuned differently in the 80s?" And Tommy wanted no part of it. That was Tommy's first tour, second tour. So he was like, "Guys,
don't rock the boat."
I'm pleading the fifth. Paul Stanley's over there. Go ask Paul right now. He's standing right there. So we grabbed Gene. We pulled him over to Paul Stanley, asked the same question, and of course Paul was like, "Yeah, we tuned to regular tuning in the 80s, probably so I can sing higher." And Gene was like, "We did this? I was unaware of this." So Gene was completely unaware that for the 80s Kiss records, they tuned to regular tuning.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, the stories are that he really wasn't, with Kiss in the 80s.
Right.
So that's awesome. And so there's this conversation can go on for 3 days here. Let's get into probably what there's 2 parts in the book that really choked me up. Your mom, she must have been an amazing woman. She did everything and anything she could for you, and I was like, holy shit, just amazing, hearing your love for her and her love for you and your brother, and it was just amazing, hearing that, because you don't get a lot of that, because usually a lot of these biographies you read or whatever, they had a shitty childhood and all gloom and doom and stuff like that. But yours was your mom was. I mean, there wasn't anything she wouldn't do to support you.
Absolutely. Again, the underlining theme through my whole book is really family and my love of family. It really is. And I mentioned it before that the reason I wrote my book was to have something for my children one day to look back on and read, because I never got to ask my parents all the questions that I ever wanted to ask them. And my mother. And I don't even know if I would ever be the person I am today without my mother's support throughout my whole career and my life. She was always the person that would be right by my side. If I didn't think I could do something, she would be the one to encourage me. She would buy my first drum set for me. She would surprise me with the new Kiss record. We struggled pretty hard back in the day financially. And somehow my mother always saw this dream of mine. And she always supported it, and not only supported it, but really came through for me every way she possibly could, all the way up to, like I said, taking her last $10 and buying a new Kiss record for me rather than buying herself a new pair of shoes or, anything else, even maybe food sometimes. She would sacrifice something for herself just to give to me. And all of those ethics and family values rubbed off on me, and that's kind of where I am in my life now with my kids. All I want to do is give my kids the life that my mother gave me. So in the book, that theme is really something that carries on throughout the book. Unfortunately, my mom had emphysema. She was very sick for a long time, and she was still alive when I was on tour with Kiss. And I wanted more than anything in the world for her to come see us when we opened for Kiss at Jones Beach. That was the closest show to where I lived in Manhattan. And she was really sick at the time. And I remember even telling Gene the whole story, how, my mom doesn't think she's going to be able to make it because she can't breathe. And, Gene got on the phone with her one day and said, "We'll send you a limo. We'll you'll be star treatment. We'll take care of you. You'll be safe. We promise." And unfortunately, my mom still couldn't make it. She couldn't breathe. She was on oxygen. And It was one of my biggest regrets that she never got to see me on tour with Kiss. She knew I was on tour with Kiss.
Right.
And, she celebrated it with me when we got the news and when we got to go home on breaks, but she never got to see me on that stage. It was one of my biggest regrets.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And the other part is when David Z passed away, I remember hearing that on the news because, I had seen him with you guys. I had seen him with TSO several times. And just a fantastic, nice guy. And he was touring with Adrenaline Mob, and they had that horrific accident down in Florida. And I can't imagine what you guys went through. Him and David were Paulie were brothers, but you were their brother as well.
Absolutely, it was one of the hardest things I've ever heard of in my life. I actually had just come home from vacation with my family, and I was laying on the couch, kind of surfing social media, and on Facebook I saw something about an accident that Adrenaline Mob had in Florida, blah blah blah. But you hear this stuff all the time, never thinking anything of it. And then as the day progressed, I started hearing more rumors that it was bad and there might even be a fatality. And again, never thinking in a million years that it could be Dave. And then, as the reports started coming in, it was actually Jeff Scott Soto from Ingve who called me and told me the news that it was actually David that was the one that passed away in the accident. And still to this day, I'm sitting in my studio right now. Everything I look at is all David Z. It's all ZO2 posters and Z-Rock posters and Trans-Siberian Orchestra stuff because I played with them for years too. And everything here reminds me of him. I have his stand-up bass sitting right next to me that his family gave me when he passed. It was just absolutely crushing when we heard the news. We were still so close, even though he was out with Adrenaline Mob and ZO2 was kind of on hiatus at that time. But I had just texted him, a week earlier for his birthday, and I was actually in the middle of writing my book when this happened. And, I would text him back and forth about confirming dates and, hey, dude, when was this and when did we do this? Because I wasn't great with dates, so I had to confirm like some of the dates with him and Paulie. And to hear this news was still so surreal, like it still feels like it didn't happen, and it's already been over 3 years. It was devastating.
Yeah, it's terrible, and they've done a benefit every year for the David Z Foundation, and it was just on a couple weeks ago, and I saw you on there, and there was one, I don't know if it was from the first year or last year's benefit. It was you, Paulie Z, and some other guys doing "I Still Love You" by Kiss.
Yes, so with Bruce Kulick, that clip.
Oh, Bruce. Okay, yeah.
Yes, so that was right after he passed. That was in L.A. at the Whiskey A Go-Go. We did a memorial benefit concert right after he passed, and Paulie asked me to be a part of it, and we got up on stage and sang "I Still Love You." I was playing drums. Bruce Kulick was on guitar. Paulie was on vocals. And if you go online and look at that clip, it's on my Facebook page, on YouTube, and all that stuff. It's one of the most powerful performances I've ever been a part of. Not only the vocal, but Bruce's guitar mixed with Paulie's vocal, and it was just so powerful to be not only a part of, but even listen back. You can hear the raw emotion coming out of Paulie's voice. It was maybe a week or so after his brother died, and to sing a song like "I Still Love You" was crushing.
Yeah, it was chilling. And and on that performance, do not sell yourself short because there's a lot of amazing drum fills in that song, and there's one especially that I like. It's like after or during the solos, and it's just like a da-doon, 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 like a slower fill.
Yeah.
And you absolutely killed it. And when anyone ever does that song, I listen if they do that one drum fill correctly, and you fucking absolutely killed it.
I really do appreciate it. Again, I obviously I love Kiss. I've played that song so many times. We used to do it in Kiss Nation, but that night there was something special about that performance. Dave, you could feel him with us, and he was kind of like channeling his energy into all of us to give like the performance of a lifetime.
Yeah, that was an absolute amazing performance. And so for since ZO2. You've been in the Eric Martin band, Steve Augeri band. Tell us a little bit about those. I think that's awesome. Like Eric Martin, obviously singer from Mr. Big, and Steve Augeri was in and Journey for the. Actually, I think he recorded the first album with them without Steve Perry, I believe.
Yes, he did.
And I actually got to see them with him. I thought he was fantastic. What do you play? Do you do a bunch of Journey songs with them, or do you do any ZO2 songs with any of these bands?
I don't, but believe it or not, the Eric Martin Band, we were actually discussing not that long ago doing a ZO2 song, but we haven't up until this point because obviously, number one, with the Steve Jury Band, Journey is a much bigger band than ZO2 ever was. And same thing goes for Mr. Big. So, it's hard squeezing in a ZO2 song, especially since I wasn't the vocalist in ZO2. If I was the vocalist, it would probably be a little different. But because I was the drummer, I'm more than happy to play all of those hits. So it's funny with the Eric Martin Band, I actually met Eric for the very first time at one of his David Z memorial shows, the one in New York. And he played the show and he was part of it. And I met him backstage and we just hit it off. He's a crazy, funny guy. He was telling jokes, making fun of my nose and trying to break the ice, because it was a sad event. And a couple weeks later, I got a call from his guitar player, who is Steve Brown from Trickster.
Okay.
And PJ Farley from Trickster is the bass player in the band, called me up and asked me if I wanted to be a part of his new solo band. And I'm a huge Mr. Big fan, big Trickster fan. So I jumped at the chance. I thought it was a great opportunity. Love playing those Mr. Big songs. A lot of them are really challenging. Pat Torpey is one of the greatest drummers that ever lived. And, it's so much fun going on. I'm still with them. We do random dates throughout the country every year. We had all our dates this summer, unfortunately, canceled because of COVID. But, we're still going out there. We're still jamming. Come see us if you ever get a chance. We do all the Trickster hits. We do all the Mr. Big hits. It's a lot of fun. We do a meet and greet after. It's just a great time.
That's cool. I would definitely want to catch that. Hey, Trickster songs and Mr. Big songs in one show, that'd be freaking fantastic. And Steve Brown, the only American to ever play in Def Leppard.
Yes, obviously, Steve fills in for Def Leppard. When any of those guys have an emergency or go down, he's actually filled in for both of those guys on different occasions. So Steve is a monster player. PJ Farley is another monster player from Trickster. He has actually just joined Fozzy, Chris Jericho's band. He's going to be out on the road with them coming
did?
up. So he did, yeah.
Cool.
Actually, his first show might even be tomorrow or Tuesday with them.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
He just started playing with them. So again, it's a phenomenal band. It's an all-star band. Eric Martin's still an amazing vocalist. One of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. We call him Mr. Big Mouth because all he does is talk. But just an overall great guy, great fun project.
That's awesome. Before I let you go here, I don't want to keep you out of the pool for the whole night here. A couple of things real quick. Let's talk a little bit about wrestling with Joey Licious. I watched all the shows on Amazon Prime the other day, and I'm gonna watch them again, and I will give you a review on each one. And I have to tell you also, as we're talking about Amazon, you are the only person I've ever written a review on Amazon for. Like, I've never ever written a review on anything on there ever that I could even think of besides your book, because it hit me right in the spot where I was like, wow. And I even put it in the review that, the similarities between, how you grew up and I grew up. I mean, we were like neck and neck there, late 70s, early 80s, and I just enjoyed it. But I will also do the same for the Joey Licious, which is great. So let us in on that.
And I appreciate it so much. Anyone listening, please, if you have any chance to go online and give me a review for my books, for my videos, for anything on Amazon, it helps tremendously. It creates more opportunity. When Amazon sees good reviews, they want to produce more products for you. So I couldn't tell you how important it is for us artists. Thank you so much. So the Wrestling with Joey Licious project is funny. So as a reader of my book, you know the story behind my love of wrestling. So when I was a kid, Kiss and wrestling were my life. We talked about it briefly early on. And I never became a wrestler because a couple of reasons. One, there was just nowhere to train as a kid to be a wrestler. I could practice drums all day long in my room, but I couldn't practice to become a professional wrestler. It was just, there was nowhere to do it. And I was a really large kid when I was growing up. I was twice the size of all my friends. But at a certain point, I stopped growing and all my friends caught up to me. So I never grew past. I was about 5'11" in about the 5th grade, and I never grew another inch. I'm barely 6 foot now, so I never really got the wrestler size in me. But I never lost my love of wrestling. So after I did Z-Rock on IFC, the acting bug really hit me hard. I enjoyed it so much, being in front of the camera and exaggerating, different versions of myself. And a version of this show came into my brain while we were doing Z-Rock, and it basically is it's semi-scripted again, just like Z-Rock, and it's semi-based on real life because it's based on my love of wrestling. I'm in the show. I'm a 40-something-year-old guy who loved wrestling all his life, tried to become a professional wrestler, but never made it. Was always failing at every turn. Only wrestled in grammar schools, could never, even get to the high school level, never mind the professional level like WWE or something like that. And the story of the show is basically me as a failed wrestler living with my mom in my apartment, and these wrestling legends appear to me in my imagination to give me advice throughout the show and kind of almost self-sabotage myself because they're not really there. They're in my imagination. So, for instance, Roddy Piper will pop out of a closet and give me some bad advice and put me in a headlock and choke me unconscious. And my mom will run in to my bedroom and see me laying on the floor unconscious in a skirt. And, stuff like that happens throughout the show. So that's really the premise of the show. It's me as a wannabe wrestler who never made it, starring myself and all of the wrestling legends from the 80s. We have everyone you can think of on board. The episodes on Amazon Prime right now have Roddy Piper, Mick Foley, the Iron Sheik, Tito Santana, Jimmy Superfly Snuka. We have Hulk Hogan on board. We have Ric Flair on board. All of the major wrestling stars of the 80s are all on board with this show.
Woo!
And that's basically what basically what the show is about. And, it's a dream come true. Not only I never got to become a wrestler, but I'm living my dream working with these wrestlers. My wife always kids around and says, there's no TV show called Wrestling with Joey Licious. It's just you filming with these wrestlers and them putting you in their signature moves because you love it, which is 100% true. I enjoy every second. I've got choked out by Roddy Piper. Jimmy Snuka did like a semi-superfly on me. Tito Santana gave me his flying elbow through a table. I'm living the dream. So that's what the show is about. You can stream it on Amazon Prime right now. They're just 5-minute episodes right now on Amazon Prime. We're hoping Amazon picks up a full season and it becomes available, 25, 30-minute episodes. But in the meantime, what I'm doing is, because of COVID, all this production and stuff, I couldn't film anymore. My staff, all the crew, we can't film during COVID. So what I did was I took the Wrestling with Joey Licious Season 1 storyline and I wrote my next book. And that's what's coming out now. My next book is going to be, and this is really breaking news because nobody knows this yet. It'll be out later this month or at the beginning of September. And it's literally the story, Season 1 of Wrestling with Joey Licious. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It stars myself, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Chris Jericho. All these wrestlers are in the book giving me advice throughout my wrestling career. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. That's excellent. Yeah, and I love the Roddy Piper one. I'm here to chew gum and kick ass.
I guess I'm all out of bubble gum.
Just excellent. Yeah, and Joey, thank you for spending time with us here. It's a early Sunday evening, and you're in New York, so I'm in Pennsylvania, so I'm sure we're having the same hot as ass weather here, and I took you out of your pool, and I'll get you back in there with your kids in a couple minutes here. But thank you very much for spending some time with us. It's been a great conversation. I've been looking forward to it. The book is amazing. The audiobook is even more amazing, in my point of view. But I think you need the both of them out there, for sure.
Seriously, thank you so much for having me. It means the world to me. Not only that you took your time to read the book and listen to the book, but that you enjoyed it, and most of all, can relate to it. Again, that's what I love, the comments that I see on Amazon or in person when people tell me about my book, when they can relate to stories in my book and feel like they're living their childhood again while reading my book, that means the world to me. So please, anyone out there that has grown up in the 80s pop culture, whether it's wrestling or superheroes or Star Wars or cartoons or Kiss, any of those things are featured so heavily in my book. I think you'll get a kick out of it. I think you'll relate to the book. It's available on Amazon. You can go on Amazon.com and type in either my name, Joey Cassata, or Start with a Dream. Either way, you'll find the book pop up. You can get the audiobook on iTunes. You can get it on Amazon as well as Audible. The audiobook is everywhere. You can get it via Kindle. You can get it everywhere books are sold, really. You can go on barnesandnobles.com. Anywhere books are sold, you'll be able to get my book. If you can, check it out. I'd love to hear your comments about it. I really think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, guys, definitely, absolutely get it. It's a fun read, and I know Joey gets a lot of shit on the other podcasts from Tom and Zeus and guys on Podcast Rock City about the length of the book. It's a big book, but you know what? It's written double spaced. There's a lot of pictures in it, and believe me, it goes by in a heartbeat. It really does. And like Joey said, like I can absolutely relate to like everything in this book, except being a professional musician, for sure.
And there's so many pictures. There's so many behind the scenes pictures of Kiss on tour, like I said, playing wiffle ball, or scenes on Z-Rock behind the scenes. Like I said, the way I formatted the book, I wanted it very user friendly. Yes, of course, it's a big book, but it's user friendly. If I would have formatted it like a regular book, it's only a 330-page book if it's formatted like the Paul Stanley biography or the Gene Simmons autobiography. But the way I spaced it out, user-friendly, reading-wise, and picture-wise, it became a big book. So, yes, you can go on to these other podcasts and they make fun of the size of the book, but it's not always the size that matters, my friends.
Ooh, that's what she said. Yeah, and there's a ton of stuff in the book, guys, that we didn't even touch on tonight. Like I said, I didn't want to give the whole book away on the podcast, guys. Definitely, absolutely check it out. But once again, Joey, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your summer, my friend.
Dude, again, thank you so much for having me. I love the show. Big fan of the show. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening to our bonus episode with Joey Cassata, and stay tuned for our regular episodes.
Some people make castles from sand, but they don't last, so I don't understand. Well, some of my friends have houses and trees, but trees get old and that's not for me. I'm gonna have a playhouse that stands the test of time. I only use the strongest materials that I find. I'll make it with my daddy and let my friends all in, 'cause I'll build it with heavy metal. Some people live in houses of cards, but I'm here to tell you that they won't get far. But most people's playhouses come from the start. But I'm into metal, so I need